The December 1 meeting of the Transportation Committee will now come to order. Madam Clerk, call roll.
Mr. Cassetti. Chairman Colby.
Here.
Mr. Daniele. Mr. Esposito. Mr. Gamble. Mr. Howland. Mr. Lee. Mr. Monero. Mr. Rocco.
Is there anyone signed up for public forum?
There are no public forum speakers this evening.
Is there anyone here that would like to speak to this committee at this time? Seeing none, there is a presentation from Susan Walsh on the Transportation Committee portion of the county budget, and I have asked her to kind of skip right to the Transportation Committee and not give the overview of the whole budget, as long as that's okay with everybody in the committee, which I believe it is. Susan, it's your show.
Thank you. Good evening. Clearly, my presentations have not been tremendously exciting since I've been asked to abbreviate this, but
No offense.
yeah, I'm happy to oblige. We're going to go right to the transportation slides, the slides that are pertinent to the Transportation Department. Here we go. You'll see here that expenses decrease in the Transportation Department. This is because debt service reduces by $1.6 million due to refinancing and low interest rates, which we've been talking about all through these committee hearings. This decrease in debt service is somewhat offset by an increase in employee benefits and workers' compensation. There are some revenue increases in the Transportation Department. There are three primary ones. The motor vehicle registration fee introduced in 2008 is budgeted at $4.3 million. For 2011, that's an $800,000 increase over what was budgeted for 2010. And that increase has been budgeted based on actuals that we've received in 2009 and we anticipate receiving in 2010. These funds are used to offset road maintenance and bridge maintenance costs. There's also increased federal aid for operating and equipment costs for the computerized traffic control center, and a new revenue, $30,000 from the town of Parma to manage their federal aided bridge design projects. Here are some Transportation Department highlights. For 2011, DOT's major budget expenditures are $18.7 million for highway engineering and operations. This includes $4.6 million for CHIPS, $5.1 million for snow and ice control, and $8.1 million for road maintenance. $4.4 million will be expended on traffic signal engineering and operations, which this division conducts traffic studies, signal maintenance, and highway lighting work. $3.5 million will be expended on traffic investigations, pavement markings, and sign fabrications. $2.6 million for bridge operations and maintenance. Displayed on this slide is the mandation of the county under New York State transportation law to match state-provided operating assistance to the Rochester-Genesee Regional Transportation Authority. The county anticipates this contribution staying flat for 2011 at $3.5 million. This completes my presentation for this evening, and I will be happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Monroe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few questions that I'd like to ask. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the administration. In pages 9 and 345 of the budget, it refers to sign retroreflectivity upgrade to replace 73,000 signs. Is there any federal funding to support the project?
Terry Rice, Director of Transportation. Through the chair, we did receive some that we completed this year. We had some last year, some stimulus money for about $300,000 that we replaced some of them. We do not have any federal money to replace any of the others that we have. We replaced, I said, about 3,500 signs for that $300,000, but there is no federal money to do the other at this time.
Okay. Thank you. Couple other questions, Mr. Chair, if I may. On, let's see, the slide from the presentation that we didn't see from the earlier part of the presentation refers to you, Mr. Chair, excuse me, $10.3 million in mandated expenses for transportation, and the overall budget for transportation is listed as $28.7 million, whereas the rest of the budget, or the budget as a whole, is listed as being 82% mandated. Is there a reason that transportation specifically has such a lower rate of mandated costs?
Through the chair, it's just a function of the fact that highway maintenance and bridge engineering aren't mandated functions. So the functions within the Department of Transportation that are mandated are the CHIPS, the work that is done through the CHIPS funding, the contribution that's made to the Regional Transportation Authority, and the operation of the Aurora Bridge, for which we receive 100% state reimbursement.
Okay. One last question, please, Mr. Chair. Through you to the administration, do we have a set definition or a set way of determining whether or not something is a mandate or not, and counting that in the budget as being a mandate?
Through the chair, that's a complex question. Yes, we do. It's something that's required by state or federal law. But I would like to elaborate on that. In 1996, the Center for Governmental Research did a study in this county to look at mandated and non-mandated spending. And one of the things they said in the report, and the lawyers in the room will appreciate it, is that mandates are like obscenities under the law. You sort of know one when you see one. It's difficult to precisely define what is a mandate. It's really a combination of many different factors that you take into account to determine whether something's mandated or non-mandated.
Okay. Mr. Chair, can I follow up on that? Okay, so what are they? I mean, Mr. Chair, she essentially said it depends. I'm wondering what it depends on, I suppose.
That's kind of a general budget question, and we're supposed to be trying to be in the Transportation Committee. Can you?
Well, Mr. Chair, can I clarify before?
Sure.
I mean,
Go ahead.
if it's
Try.
something that we can have answered for full
Right.
legislature, it doesn't have to be answered now.
Well, maybe you better ask the question so they can be prepared for the full
That's-
legislature. Or give it to you in writing. I don't know what you're prepared for.
Through the chair, can the question be restated?
Go ahead.
What are the factors that lead one to conclude that something beyond the general definition that you laid out, what constitutes a mandate?
Through the chair, it's what I described last night during committee hearings, and that is whether it's required by state or federal law. It's we look at the operations of a particular function or department. We look at how things have been treated historically, any changes that have made, how other counties treat those same expenses, and we do have discussions with the Association of Counties to see how generally expenses are considered. And all of that comes together to help us to determine what are mandated and non-mandated costs.
If you want to elaborate on that, I think it'd be more appropriate in a different
Okay.
committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions before this? Mr. Lee?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the administration, on page 346, the total appropriation for the City of Rochester programs is budgeted to decrease by $171,578, which is approximately about 12%. Is this keeping in line with our agreement for funding city transportation projects?
Through the chair, yes, it is. That's simply a reduction in debt service costs.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other questions? Mr. Danelli?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, a follow-up to Legislator Lee's question. What is the debt service? And if you could, at the same time, elaborate a little bit on exactly what this 131K debt service is relative to the City of Rochester program?
Through the chair, are you asking specifically what the debt service is attributable to on this line? Is that what your question is?
I guess what's the annual debt service and the balance on the debt would be, I guess, two questions. Through the chair.
Through the chair, we'll get that to you. But the second part of your question, I'm going to ask the Director of Transportation to respond to.
Through the chair, make sure. Why don't you repeat what you're asking about with the 131K, just so I understand completely what your question is.
Through the chair, in looking at this line item, the City of Rochester programs, and reading its description, part of it is obviously debt service on city street and bridge capital projects, which the county has undertaken in accordance with New York State Highway Law, Section 131, off the top of my head. What exactly what exactly is that? I mean, what's the program? Outside of the lights, I mean, I think the part about expressway lighting is pretty clear, but it's the rest of it that is unclear.
Okay. Through the chair, the highway law specifically allows counties to contribute money to the cities for particular streets to do improvements on those streets. And those streets have to be defined under highway law, under the Section 131K of the highway law. And for the most part, they're more of your arterial streets that are coming, might be county roads in the towns, and as they come into the city, they're now become city streets. So the Main Street, Clinton, St. Paul, Clifford Street, Atlantic, streets such as that are classified as 131K streets. And the city can request, or does request on an annual basis, through the capital improvement program, for us to allocate money in our CIP and put it into the plan, and then allocate it at the time of the capital budget, allocate dollars to the city to do reconstruction improvements to those roads. And we provide in the CIP, you can look, we have X amount of dollars in each year for particular roads that we will give to the city to do the improvements. And we're involved in the planning and the design and the construction of them and overseeing the project. Once that is done, when we pay the money, we now have debt for it. So that's where, in this area, this is where the debt is paid.
Thank you.
Just for clarification for the chairman, there's county roads in the towns, but there's no county roads in the city. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay. I thought I knew my roads.
If I said that, I didn't think I said that.
No, you said it right.
Okay.
Is there any other questions? There being there's no other matters?
But you have to do the approval of minutes.
Oh, the next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. You have the October 27th minutes of the Transportation Committee before you. They stand approved unless the clerk is notified of any changes at the end of the day. Is there any matters to become before this committee at this time? There are no further business the December 1st meeting of the Transportation Committee stands adjourned. The next meeting of Transportation Committee is scheduled for January the 5th of 2011 at 5:30. Thank you.